Hey, Eric.
Hello, Doug.
How's it going?
Slightly tired, but I can't complain, all things considered.
There you
That's
go.
good.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
About the same. Tired.
Okay.
Don't know why, but yeah.
Mine's a simple excuse. I stayed up too late.
Yeah. I wish I could blame it on that. At least last night, I didn't go to bed that late, so I have no excuse other than just getting old.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I tried this morning as well.
Hey,
Hi.
I notice a theme here.
There's a problem is that I have to drop my daughter very early at 20 to 6 in the morning, so I have a good excuse.
So do you have to drop her off at school?
No, she's going to be a nurse, and she's an early shift. I'm a bit moved to the place right now, so
Okay.
for limited time.
Yep. All right. Hey, Tommy.
Yo.
Lemons. Mr. Clemens, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. It's okay. And Vlad.
Good morning, Doug.
Hello. You always sound so chipper, Vlad. I love it.
Well, just after this meeting, I'm going drinking, so.
Oh. That is so funny.
It's my Thursday drinking group.
Christian, are you there?
Hey, good morning.
Hey. And Mr. Mark.
Hi, Doug.
Hey.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Hankui, are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Actually, there was one person. I did not get their company affiliation. Hold on. I love things that are on the web, but sometimes they are so slow. Look at that. Come on. Scroll. There we go. I'll catch up with him later. All right. Remy, are you there?
Yep. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hold on a sec. There we go. Okay. Lucas, are you there? Lucas?
Hello.
Hello. Gotcha. And Lance.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello. Brian.
Hello.
Hey. While we're waiting, we are going to have a call, an SDK call this week. And they actually have quite a few things on the agenda. So for anybody who wants to join that call, you may want to take a look at it while we're waiting or in advance of the call. Hello, Heinz.
Hello, sorry, I was on mute there.
No, you're all good. Just a couple more seconds or so, then we'll get started.
Doug, Doug, Doug.
Hey, Scott.
Morning.
All right, let's go ahead and get this thing started. All right. Okay, community time. Anything from the community people want to bring up that's not on the agenda?
I've got a question here.
Yes, sir.
What's the status on doing cloud events in AWS? I got some questions on that from some friends. I know there were initially talks about doing custom transports for SNS, SQS, whatever. That got canceled and it was going to be implemented in the SDK. And in the SDK, the conclusion was that it was going to be implemented somewhere in AWS land and not in the official Cloud Events SDK because it doesn't really make sense. And it seems that nothing happened. I think all SDKs, Scott asked which SDK. I checked up, I have the PRs in my history. I can link them soonish, but it's unclear what's the status on that. I know Tim from AWS was in this group, but he's no longer with AWS. So any updates on that would be good.
Anybody have any?
In the past, I was just dumping the cloud event to a JSON and putting that in whatever transport, but it's not ideal.
Anybody have any comments on that? I know nothing about what's going on with AWS with this stuff personally.
I mean, we've had a pretty consistent standing around proprietary protocols.
Well, we do have that wiki page that lets you point off to ones that use cloud events, but
we just need Amazon to like actually make a spec that describes how they would like the binding to happen.
Yeah. Slinky, did you want to say something? Your hand was up there for a sec.
Yeah, as far as I remember, I think I discussed with Scott about the fact that if we have a spec, we can implement it, right? But we need a spec first.
I missed that for a second. What spec are we talking about?
A binding spec for proprietary protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Golang supports PubSub. PubSub has a spec that's hosted in the Google GitHub repo. So we use that for how to do translations.
The question is shall we do AWS's work if AWS doesn't care?
Exactly.
And my inclination is to say no, which should not surprise anybody. That doesn't mean that I'm going to keep anybody from doing that work, but we also have good rules for where that needs to live, and that is not here.
Anybody else want to? Heinz, your hand's up.
I just wanted to comment that having done a little bit of stuff lately with AWS, I agree there is nothing spec'd, so that is one of the issues. But you can't just say AWS. Are we talking AWS SQS? Are we talking Kinesis? If it's Kinesis, are we talking data stream, or are we talking, you know, there's like 4 Kinesis, like they've got lots of different potential transports. So it's very dangerous just to say AWS because it's actually a suite of potential transports, not one transport.
And for AWS, or sorry, Amazon MQ, since that is standards based and it's based on ActiveMQ, there's a binding. And for all the other things, and for SQS, arguably, because send is just a post, that can also likely be done with a Cloud Events binary HTTP call. But for everything else, the engineering work of that mapping is something that arguably AWS will have to do. And there are server-side work that needs to be done for everything that's a multi-protocol service if you want to do mapping between one protocol to the other. So that cannot be done without participation of AWS. I understand that for the AWS user community, if the AWS user community wants to use PaaS services and they want to use Cloud Events, that there will have to be some description of how to go and use this, and probably also a formal specification. And that is, I don't know where the AWS user community would go and do that.
Does the adapter stuff that we have help at all in this? For example, we have one for S3 already.
I think that's different because the adapters are events that are being raised about a service and its state changes. It's not how events flow through a messaging conduit.
Gotcha. Okay. So
I mean, one of the things that we certainly, and now speaking for Microsoft, we certainly try to do here also is to make Cloud Events also a bit of a forcing function to entice middleware vendors to pick up standardized implementation neutral, vendor neutral protocol, and not to reward proprietary protocol.
Mm-hmm. So Vlad, I'm not sure that answers your question, but is there anything else you want to bring up relative to it?
Nope, it updated me on the status. I haven't missed anything.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
AWS's hands now, it doesn't seem that they're interested. Do we have anybody from AWS now that Tim has left?
I have not seen anybody from AWS since Tim left, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're having our tentacles reach out in terms of some other standardization work, and I don't think they're completely deaf to any of that stuff, but AWS is certainly not as engaged as the rest of the bunch are, and so I mean, in the end, that's their fault. But if that comes up, if I find an angle in a different discussion to raise that, then I certainly will. And anybody who does that with AWS should also do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I did ask them last week in a call because like we are customers. I know like they are customer centric, so if lots of customers ask the same thing, they might do something.
Correct. The loudest voice is that of the customer who brings money.
Yes, I've heard similar things from them, yes.
I'm still working in a company that we're 150, we're not like in the 10,000, so my voice is still like just a whisper to them. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other topics for the community time? All right, moving forward then. So I got a note from the KubeCon North America folks or organizers asking if we wanted to do a maintainer session for either Cloud Events or the Serverless Working Group. We don't necessarily have to decide on this call. Right? We have until September 13th to take it back to them. But we can do 2 different sessions because we have Cloud Events and Serverless Working Group. Each one is a 35-minute session, up to 4 speakers each. If you are interested in participating in that, please reach out to me and then we can figure out exactly who's going to do it, what the topics would be and stuff like that. I figure worst case scenario, if no one really volunteers, I could strong arm Clemens to redo the thing we already did for China and Europe. Maybe even just give them the same video since it's not even tagged with what KubeCon it was for. But I figure we should at least do something to update people if they're interested. But if people have specific topics or if anybody else besides Clement and myself wants to talk, please ping me offline and we can make it happen. I don't think Clemens and myself care that much whether we do it or not. Just somebody should do something is the biggest thing, I think. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. As I said, we do have an SDK call this week after this one. We do have an agenda, so please take a look at that if you're interested. Teamwork isn't able to make the call today. He updated me offline. Nothing really major to mention other than they're still working on the new logo, but they are getting lots of interest from other folks who are looking at the spec, and they seem to be potentially lining up some collaborations with other projects, which is really kind of cool. All right, so before we jump into the PRs, anything I'm missing from the agenda before we jump into it? All right, now the first one we actually approved last week, but just to let you guys know, I haven't merged it yet because I have not been able to sync up with Christoph. He may be on vacation, to find out if he's okay with removing that little bit of non-normative text that people had a problem with. Once I'm able to hunt him down, I will talk to him about that one. And if he's okay with it, we'll merge it without that change. Let's see, the first one on the list is Remy. I believe this one is yours. I might want to refresh everybody's memory about this one since you introduced it last week.
Yes. Yeah, it's just when talking with you, like, it's just I realize that you don't always have the permission close enough to the discovery service to be able to make it dynamic. So we just loosen the requirements because the spec as it was designed before, you will not list events that you don't have access to in the discovery service. But the discovery service can basically aggregate several services without knowing their permission scheme. So in that case, it's not able to do it dynamically. So it's just to fix that.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right, any objection then to approving? All right, thank you, everybody. All right, next one, the wonderful ID one. So after last week's call, I believe the only thing that I changed in here is down in, where is it? Yeah, so down here in the API section, I made it so that it's the exact name. It's not a search term, so that the name has to match it exactly, case insensitive though. And then I opened up an issue for us to revisit the topic of how to do a, for lack of a better phrase, a wildcard type search, right? So a partial name matching kind of thing. There was at least one other suggestion mentioned that since the service name has to be a UUID, maybe we can do /services/name, and let that be the trigger to mean it's a partial match thing. I figured that's a big enough discussion that maybe we should pull that out to be a separate topic and let the ID part of this one sort of pass or fail on its own. And then if it passes, we can discuss how to do the partial search thing. But I think that's the only thing I changed since last week, aside from any typos I think Scott may have noticed at one point. Okay, any questions on this? Given all the talk we had on this one, I don't want to jump right to any objection to approving because I don't know how people feel. I know that there was some reservations, but in my, I don't know with bias or not, but in my biased opinion, more people were in favor of doing it, even though there may have been some concerns about losing the human readability form of having the name in the URL.
I feel good about it.
Okay.
If that's what you wanted.
That's the kind of feedback I'm looking for. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak up? Pro or in favor or against? Okay. Any objection then to approving? Okay, and keep in mind, nothing's set in stone. If we decide later on we actually really hate the idea, we can pull it back out. Okay, thank you, everybody. Next one, the pagination spec. So just to refresh everybody's memory, I took an AI to go see what it would take to add paging type of functionality to our spec, and I decided that we actually may want this type of functionality for other specs, like perhaps for the schema registry or the, I guess that'd be the only other one, the schema registry. So I decided to create a separate specification that can be reused in conjunction with our other specs like discovery. I pretty much base this on a lot of stuff I saw out there, like on GitHub, right, where they use, I can't remember the spec number. Where is it? It wasn't 333. No, it's yeah, I think it might be this one, RFC 5988. It defines how to add HTTP header links that look like these to your HTTP responses to include exactly this type of information. You know, things how to get the next chunk of responses, or to get the previous ones. I don't mandate anything in particular in terms of you know, minimum sizes and stuff like that. That I do define a little bit of a negotiation. I did notice a typo here. In the text, I removed the talk about expires as being part of this. This is actually a typo here. The expires here should not be here. Rather, instead, you know what? This is old. I'm sorry, I forgot to push this. I made a change to this section where I included an HTTP header for the expires based upon Clemens's comment. I will fix that, I apologize. So if you're looking at this, know that the expires is not a field on the link. It's actually a separate HTTP header that tells you when this this pagination stuff will expire, and that's going to be useful in cases where someone actually wants to have a sort of a persistent state associated with their pagination query, because maybe the data is changing on a regular basis and they can't return a static set, you know, for page, or the static list for, say, page 3 is always fixed, right? It may be changing, you know, every minute kind of stuff. And so they may need to keep some sort of persistent state associated with it, and in which case they'll include some sort of unique ID somewhere in here that allows them to know which query this person's iterating over. Anyway, I apologize. I thought I pushed this up, but I must not have for the expires header. But with that, any questions? Okay, given my goof up for not pushing the latest stuff, I don't feel comfortable asking for you guys to merge it because you haven't seen the latest stuff. So I will fix that. But I guess I'd like to know from the group, is this general direction okay? I mean, are there any concerns about, I think, the concepts of what I'm putting forward here, aside from my typos and the expire stuff that I forgot to push?
What do you think of stream support, Doug?
Stream support.
Like if I, basically like an active watch on the services. So instead of paginating, you just stream out all the results as they change.
I personally don't have a problem with that. If we do that, I'd like to see that in addition to this, because I think both are valid use cases. But if somebody wants to add a streaming kind of thing as well, I guess we could look at doing that. I don't personally have a problem with it. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Sounds lovely to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Streaming and pagination stuff might go nicely with the propose but postpone GraphQL bindings too.
So, Vlad, say that one more time. You said this would go nicely with the GraphQL stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Doesn't GraphQL have native pagination and support for that?
I don't know. I was going to ask you that. I've only looked at GraphQL very, very briefly, and I didn't notice whether they had pagination or not.
As far as I know, they do. Okay. But I'm not fully confident. Yes, they do.
Okay. So are you suggesting, what are you suggesting about their pagination relative to ours? Or this, I should say.
I'm very much in favor of this.
Okay. Do they follow a similar pattern to what we have here?
I'll be honest and say that I haven't read this enough to be able to comment on it.
Okay, I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, if people are okay with this, and are they okay with this today, and then in you know, a month or two they realize, hey, this is wrong, we should do it the way they do it, and if we need to change it, we can, obviously. Onkui?
Yes, I think there will be more discussions about the parameters. For example, the page number thing. Maybe some people will disagree about using this kind of pagination, because adding a new record will change the page, you know. like if I add a new record to the beginning of the collection, and the page might change from 3 to 4, which is inconsistent.
Yeah, actually, one of the changes I picked up from last week is, I don't remember who this person is, Sanjay. They suggested using limit and offset instead of size and page, which I actually did change. And again, I apologize for not pushing it up there. So I don't know if that helps your concern at all. I don't think it does, but from just a naming perspective, I did go with limit and offset instead. But I think your overall question about, what happens if the next page or offset, whatever you want to call it, changes because something was added or removed, right? While you're in the middle of this pagination, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly why I wanted to talk about, that's exactly why I wanted to add that expires thing. Because if someone, on the server side, if you want to actually support not, you want to support someone not getting messed up as they iterate over these things, and they want to get in essence, generate a static list, and then when they're done pagination, when they're done with the pagination, they want to in essence delete that temporary result set. They need to know when it's safe to delete it, right? And that's what the expires time is supposed to provide, sort of that handshake back and forth to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, some APIs, they use like the next token kind of thing, which is the next token usually is like a primary key or something of the collection. Back to the, the name and ID discussion, like for example, a name could be a good next token. Like if I have 100 ordered names, right? I can, no matter how you add a new name to the beginning or the end, I can always use my current next token, which is a name, to paginate to the next page.
Yeah, that is true. I just wonder how you handle sort of edge cases where, let's say you have instead of size in here, right, you say next token or next record, right, and you have the ID. What happens to that if that record vanishes?
If that record is removed, I think.
Yeah.
But that's fine. It's I can usually we just need to make sure the next time when I use this key to query the next page, usually it's just larger than this key. Now,
I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I can comment on some more details and examples later, maybe.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments on that? Because I know there are lots of different ways to do this kind of stuff, and I have no clue in terms of what's really, really popular out there.
Yeah, my only feedback is I like I think the scheme we're just talking about, where instead of having page, it's offset. And so you could say offset 10, size 100, and you get stuff from 11 to 110.
So interesting. So aside from the name change, do you actually view offset as semantically different than page, right? To you, offset is more like the 10th record out of 1,000, where page to me was the 3rd page out of 10.
Right, but you have to calculate the offset based on size times page, whereas offset, if you just ask for offset, you know that you're getting the 1,000th thing in the collection.
Right. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to go back and take a look at the text and see, because honestly, when I made that change, I did basically just a search and replace on the words. I guess I need to go back and make sure that the wording is more record-based as opposed to page-based, because you're right, there are different semantics there. So I'll take a look at that. So thanks for the reminder, Scott. Okay. Any other comments? Does anybody have any strong objection with heading this direction? That's my biggest concern right now. Okay, not hearing any. So then hopefully next week we can look to approve some version of this thing based upon the comments I get. It's been out there for quite a while. Okay, in that case, we have a whole bunch of work in progress things. The SDK rules, or maintainer rules, that's on the agenda for the SDK call, so we don't necessarily have to discuss that here. However, If you are interested in that topic, please join the SDK call because we're going to be talking about that one. Jim unfortunately told me he could not make the call today. And I don't believe he's had any updates to the protobus specification, so I don't think that's going anywhere. Slinky, what do you want to do with these two?
I think what we should do is close both of them, but keep the issue open.
Okay. Any objection? Sorry, go ahead.
If the community is not interested in this moment, in my opinion, the problem still persists. So that's why I'm saying we should keep the issue open. And maybe those two were not good solutions. I don't know, but.
Well, we don't necessarily have to close them. It's more, from my perspective, it's more, if we're going to keep them open, then I'd like to see at least some forward progress being made, like even if it's just offline discussions that are happening. But I got the sense that there really aren't even offline discussions. And I don't know how to interpret that. Is it people don't like the solutions? Is it people don't think it's a problem? People are just busy? I mean, for example, Clemens, you had some comments on the multi-part mode on one. Did you think that it's not a problem? Did you think that the existing specs already deal with this? Do you remember with the discussion? It was a while ago.
Yeah, I believe this is not a problem.
Okay, so I guess Slinky, for you, the question here is: do you want to have offline discussions to either be convinced that Clemens is right or to convince Clemens that he's wrong, or do you not feel it's worth having the discussion at all and we should just close it?
In all honesty, at this moment, I really don't have time for this. So
okay, that's fair.
It's really time sucking. So
okay, that's fair. So then the proposal
if there's
you go ahead. Sorry.
If there's already people that is interested, then I might dedicate some time for this and continue. But if I'm the only one, I think people, I mean, that there is not even point to start to work on that. So
I'm very interested. I just don't have a lot of time. We have a concrete use case around data ingestion on big data pipelines, and multi-part or JSON streaming would be exactly what they want to ingest cloud events into like a data lake. But yeah, I don't have time to dedicate to that solution right now.
So it's interesting. Do you guys want to keep them open and just let them sit in the backlog for a while, or close them and then reopen? Because we can. I don't mind going either way. I just wasn't sure if there was any interest in it. Because aside from Slinky, Sky, I think you're the first one who actually spoke up and said, "Hey, this might be useful."
I think we should take an action item, maybe table the discussion around closing these, and everyone should go and talk to their data scientists and see if they're interested in cloud events, and then what's preventing them from using it, because I think it might be ingestion speed. And if that's the case, then a streaming proposal is probably better. I was talking to my data scientist, and he was saying that the reason cloud events is really interesting is that cloud events allows you to have a single ingestion pipeline where the schema is self-describing. And they're really only talking about structured mode. Or, structured mode.
In my use case, I wanted to play with knative eventing and try to implement some kind of streaming between the different components. So at some point, I used to experiment some kind of use case, a use case for that, because again, it always connects to the fact that there are some payloads that are streaming by nature. Okay, so.
Okay, well, it sounds to me that we have a proposal, rather than to close it right now, to give it at least one more week, have people go off to their respective companies or whatever to see if there's interest in this stuff, and then maybe on next week's call revisit it and see what kind of information we get back, and maybe make a decision next week, or at least revisit the discussion next week. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, specifically ask you like the big data folks that you work with, and see if they're interested.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody, for that. All right, interop and discovery spec. I can't remember, I apologize. I don't know if this was a formal action item for me to look to set up a time to discuss, but I just noticed it again this morning as I was looking through the notes here. So I guess I'm proposing that since we have an SDK call every other week, maybe we should have an interop or implementation discussion about the discovery spec after next week's phone call, where whenever this call ends, we'll just roll over and talk about interop or implementation details next week. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Are there any other topics we want to bring up relative to the interop or implementation details, though? I know personally I haven't had a chance to do any more coding yet, unfortunately. I hope to, but I've just ran out of time.
I've not had time either.
Yeah. I suspect everybody's busy. Scott said the same thing. Okay. I'm not hearing anybody jump in there. Okay, so maybe by next week, the phone call next week might be a forcing function for us to find some time, maybe. We'll see. Okay, with that, we're technically at the end of the agenda. Are there any other topics people would like to bring up? Hunkui? Sorry.
Yes, yeah. So is there a place documenting how the community and the vendors support the cloud events?
How they support it? I don't think
Or do we know which vendor is supporting the cloud events?
We know that there are some out there because we just hear about it. Like, for example, Mike, give kudos again to Microsoft being the first one formally supported in their bridge stuff. But I don't think we have a formal list anyplace unless someone else on the call can think of someone who's been gathering this information.
Yeah, if there's a list, I'd like to happy to add Alibaba Cloud to that list.
Actually, hold on a minute. Hold on. So we do have this. So at a bare minimum, we can add you to here. But I guess we have to be a little careful, though. I'd like to get other people's opinions on this, because this is meant to be, I think, open source stuff.
Yeah.
Do we want to include proprietary stuff here?
It's pretty old.
Yeah, it is old.
It sounds interesting to know a list of vendors you can go to that support cloud events.
Yeah, I agree, but useful. I guess what we could do is rename this from open source to just usage or something like that, right? And have an open source section as well as a proprietary section. As long as we have more than one, then I won't feel like it's straight to advertisement, right? Then I won't feel as bad. What do people think?
So doesn't
some work too on the cloud events.
I'm sorry, say it again, Scott. You were cutting out there a sec.
Google also supports cloud events on PubSub.
Right.
So I mean, it's not just one. There's several vendors.
Yeah, I was just picking on Microsoft. I didn't think they were the only one. Was there someone else trying to speak up there?
Yeah, sorry. With the main cloud events.io website, is there a list of integrations and different vendors?
I keep forgetting we have a website.
I feel like that's the best place. The
Here we go.
It's like Oracle and Knative.
So yeah, we have this too.
Maybe Alibaba Cloud today.
Yeah, we can definitely add Alibaba here. I think the bar on getting added to here is just you poke somebody to do it, or open up a PR against our web repo.
I like it more here than in a markdown file in our repo. Like, this is more visible.
Yeah, I agree. So why don't we do that? So I'll tell you what, I'll send out a note to the mailing list saying if you want to get your company or offering whatever it is added to this page, open up a PR in our web repo, and then Alibaba, you guys can do that as well. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Thank you, Grant, for reminding us we have a website. That is a great place to put it. So hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Cool. Thank you. Any other topics you want to bring up? All right, in that case, let's wrap up the attendance list and then we'll jump over to the SDK call. Ginger, you still there?
I am, Doug.
Hello. And Nick. Nick? What about Daniel?
I am here.
Excellent. And Grant, I heard you already. What about Sam? Whoops. Oh my gosh, what did I do?
Sorry, Doug, I'm here.
Who was that, Nick? That was
Yes.
Nick. Okay, good. And
Thanks.
what about Sam? Sam Rue? Sam Ree? Okay, did I miss anybody for attendance? All right, with that, thank you all for joining. If you're not interested in the SDK stuff, you are free to go. Otherwise, we'll start the SDK call up in about a minute or so. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day.
Yep. Vlad, are you trying to cause trouble?
I haven't had time to review all the videos from the time I missed. I'm curious.
Just go out of your way, make trouble.
I would never. I'm an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. All right. All right, let's get this show started here. All right, Slinky, you have an announcement to make, I believe.
Oh yeah, so after 1 or 2 months, I finally managed to release the SDK Rust version 0.2. Huge thanks to a new guy in the community, which is helping quite a lot with device features. If you open, can you open? So among the new features, really important, now we have the Kafka integration. So there is the integration with Rust RD Kafka, which is the most important library to use Kafka and Rust. So you can do things like sending and receiving cloud events with Kafka. And then we did a lot of improvements on the APIs to send and receive HTTP requests. We have new APIs on the event. We have redesigned the event builder. And then there are improvements in doc and stuff like that. So yeah, go and check it out.
Cool. Congratulations, it's exciting. Any questions, comments? All right, next one. So, go away Zoom. Okay, so we have this PR out here, which defines some rules for how to add new maintainers. And we are trying to, or the original idea was to put this at the community level. That way every single SDK didn't have their own special rules. However, it appears that there isn't not a whole lot of discussion going on around this. And it's not clear whether that means people are okay with the proposal or people don't like it, but they're afraid to speak up or haven't had time to review it. What do people think about this? We need to decide what we're going to do with this puppy.
I'm okay either way. That's the. I don't have a strong opinion in either direction. Maybe that's explaining why I'm silent on this.
So does that mean that you do not think we need to have any formal guidelines that newcomers to the group can read?
I think we should have them, but I'm not, and I'm okay with these rules. But I have no strong opinion of whether they should be at the SDK level or at the overall community level. I would be okay with the latter, but I could understand if individual SDK sub teams would want to have their own rules.
Okay.
So I said not a super strong opinion either way in that regard. But I think the rules are required overall.
Okay. Thank you, Clemens. Daniel?
Yeah, I just got a chance to read this for the first time this morning. I think, I mean, it looks reasonable. My sense is that a lot of us just don't have enough experience maintaining these particular repos to have a good sense of, well, is 20 the right number, or what's the right level? And I think there's some just uncertainty around that, and given that my guess is that this is not set in stone, that we could start with this at the community level, and then as each of the SDKs proceeds and we run into specific situations where we have to make a decision, maybe it works and maybe it doesn't work, and then at that point we have more information to make refinements, even SDK specific refinements. So yeah, I'm fine with starting with this.
All right, cool. Thank you. Scott, your hand's up.
I agree with what Daniel just said. It occurred to me that we are part of the CNCF, and maybe we can ask the CNCF for advice here for these repos and the guidelines.
In my understanding, the CNCF kind of stays out of this kind of stuff. I agree with what Daniel said. I actually like the idea of saying, start with this and then adjust as we go along. The only concern I have is whether all of the individual SDKs are okay with basically buying into these rules, right? Because if we approve this, then it's at the global level, which means every SDK is going to need to adhere to it. And I think the concern that I was hearing was, the people that have been involved in this, like Lance and obviously Slinky, they're okay with it in general. But is that sufficient to then force it upon all the other SDKs when they haven't spoken up? And so this is more of a forcing function to get people to speak up here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think personally I'm not in favor of like enforcing or writing down rules with maintenance. I mean, ideally someone can come and go. For some languages like PHP, there's probably not going to be someone creating 20 PRs before becoming a maintainer. And I don't know if everybody's going to read all of this SDK governance before creating PRs, and I'm not sure that they need to, but yeah, that, I mean, if there's a possibility to maybe slim this down, I think that might be a bit fair as well.
Okay, I have a question for you, but Scott, your hand's up first.
Yeah, I think this isn't really for contributors; it's for the actual the maintainer role for the repos. So people coming casually to update random bugs and stuff seems fine. But if you actually want to have the keys to the castle, then it's nice to have some guideline to understand how to get there if you're interested.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger concern is we don't write down how people, or if we don't write down what the path is to become a maintainer, some people will look at us as not either a real project or, oh, it's a secret club kind of thing. And we don't want either one of those views, right?
Yeah, that makes more sense, I guess.
Yeah.
For our background.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, actually that kind of answered my question. Lance, your hand's up.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it in the PR itself, but I am just a little concerned that putting hard numbers down is going to be problematic for some repositories. I mean, it may be that 20 is a pretty large number, and it might be discouraging. So what I said in my comments in the PR was that maybe there could be some sort of softer language around what it is, so that each SDK has some leeway in making decisions that aren't necessarily hard and fast based on actual numbers. Yeah, that's I guess all I really have to say.
Would you be okay with language that's something like, they've made a significant number of reviews and then put something in parentheses that says significant is obviously subjective and will vary based upon the repo, but at least then they know it's not just one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Slinky, your hand's up.
Yeah, so I think we can make things more specific than for each repo. Like I say at line 26, they say eligible pull request. That's something that really depends on the language. Like, again, in Java, typo is 3 files change with 20 lines per file, while in other language, it may be it's shorter. So I think then we can maybe make these requirements a little bit more hard on each repo. But the reason why I prefer having hard requirements in general is that you make things more transparent. So if you use soft requirements, I'm worried that this could make it could make decisions less transparent. Okay, that's really my concern about having software requirements. But again, these we can maybe relax the requirements in this document, and then on each repo we make the requirements more strict, depending on the language, depending on the library, depending on the project itself.
Okay. So I think in the document here there are two different sets of numbers. There are things like where is it? Like 20 reviews. There are those types of hard numbers. And then there are other sets of numbers like at least 2/3 of the votes. Based on what I'm hearing here, is it fair to say that people are okay with things like 2/3 of the voters have to agree? Those numbers are okay. It's just whether we want to loosen these numbers, like the 20 reviews kind of thing. Is that fair to say?
Doug, 2/3 of the vote for the maintainers of the SDK, not for all the maintainers.
Yeah, I'm just worried about
That's important.
I was loosening with my wording there. But in terms of numbers, I assume it's these numbers down here are okay. It's this number up here that people are concerned about. Is that right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so why don't we do this? I'm not hearing anybody say no to doing the rules. So what if we do this? What if we say we'll give people 1 more week to offer up alternative language? We'll put a message out into the SDK Slack channels to warn people that they need to speak up by next week, because if we don't hear any major objections to doing this, and whatever minor tweaks to the wording we make between now and then, hopefully they'll be done relatively quickly, that we're going to approve this thing next week. And be warned, this will be at the community level, which means it will apply to all SDKs. And so they need to review it, and it's what's the term people use? Lazy consensus kind of thing. So they better speak up. So it's a warning shot across the bow to pay attention.
That's good. Let's do it.
Okay. Any objection to that? Okay. Cool. Bureaucracy behind us. All right, Grant, this is all you, buddy. So I'll let you talk to this stuff.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, want to first give the preface of I think some of these issues have been solved. For context, I've been wishing to use developing some packages and samples for JavaScript using Cloud Events, and I've been wishing to use the Cloud Events SDK rather than just manually parsing HTTP headers and body and creating TypeScript types. So there's been some great progress, and I guess I'm sort of looking for a solution in terms of like towards the end of last month, I was recording a demo for using the Node SDK, and there was an error with receiving cloud events and validation, which basically crashed the program whenever trying to receive cloud events, and I was sort of curious, why do we even validate when receiving cloud events when a developer just wants to accept their object, and so I guess I wrote down I don't know, a rambling or just some issues, things on my mind of what I sort of expected in terms of the developer experience and the progress that we've made. As I've said many times, there's been some amazing progress with the JavaScript SDK, but there's some issues that where I can't use the SDK at Google for some of the Google Cloud samples due to some issues. I guess I can go one by one. First, this was the main issue I saw. The SDK over validated the cloud event, where yeah, as I said, it threw an error for a valid cloud event, and I'm not sure exactly if the SDK should verify a cloud event is valid or not when just trying to consume it. Second issue is there's some things that have been improved over time about just providing a more idiomatic common node experience of being able to consume and sending cloud event, and ideally one line of code where you don't need to create new objects for emitters. All of that's been fixed. Still, I think there's still some other issues that we could fix. And I guess overall, I sort of wanted to understand maybe how we can better test our SDKs, or I don't know if it's just this SDK. It's probably not. Can we provide some example cloud events? And I know there's a conformance testing repo. Maybe we can integrate that somehow. And so yeah, I guess so I was a little bit frustrated with the impact was I recorded a demo and couldn't use this SDK, unfortunately. And so I mean, all in all, I'm really just looking for what can I do to help improve the situation. I've been more involved with some of the code process, but I feel like it's not the amount of code changes doesn't really matter if I guess the end experience isn't I guess ideal. So that was a long sort of rant. And really I'm just trying to figure out what I can do to help make the JavaScript experience, which is probably which is the largest serverless experience, at least for Google Cloud, to be better.
Anybody want to chime in? So, okay. So Grant, let me ask a sort of a naive or simplistic question here. For the things that you've noticed, does the current process of just either opening up issues or even better, pull requests, is that process broken in some way? I guess I was kind of confused when you put together this list, because my first reaction was to be quite blunt. It's like, okay, there are issues. Let's get some PRs generated, right?
Yeah. I mean, creating issues in concrete examples, and then sending PRs. That's worked out. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. I mean, I sort of I understand that this SDK came from a pretty bad state, and we've slowly morphed it into a much better state. But I guess, like, compared to other SDKs, there's I mean, this is just one metric, but there's like over 600 commits, and I don't know how many PRs, but probably most of them. There's like 150 PRs or something, 100 PRs, and I feel like just that I don't know if we're just churning through changes in code that doesn't really impact the end user, or what, but I've seen other SDKs where there's been like less than 10 PRs, and you provide sort of an idiomatic experience.
Daniel, your hand's up.
Yeah, so Ruby was used as a comparison point, and as a Ruby maintainer, I do have to mention that when Ruby was developed, we were already standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. I mean, the JavaScript SDK, JavaScript SDK and the Python SDK, those were our starting points. And so we were doing a kind of a clean room, start from scratch implementation from that. So yes, of course, we have kind of a much more clean experience when we don't have that long history of churn in the spec and users and bugs and all that stuff that makes software development so interesting. So yes, I think that's the comparisons that we see are just to be expected based on the states of the various SDKs in their life cycles. I think that's I get the frustration here. I also work at Google in the same role as Grant, and so I'm using these libraries myself, and I'm customer zero, as we say internally, as well, and have to deal with these bugs. I think it's just harder when there's a larger SDK with more history and a number of different developers who have worked on it to deal with it. But we just have to kind of make sure that we raise the issues as they come, get them fixed, and it's just that's how software works. So.
Yeah. So Grant, are there issues open for all the things that you've identified?
Yeah, I've been actively creating issues, and as I think is mentioned, yeah, in some of the links, like some of these are resolved pretty quickly. I guess the the main issue is that I shouldn't be like developing a demo or testing in production and then find an issue in the SDK or in the I guess the experience of using it. I know there's a lot of tests for the JavaScript SDK, but somehow I don't know. I think there were like 100 something tests, but then something for like receiving a cloud event, like like somehow the tests passed, but the actual developer experience failed. So so yeah, I mean, we can still like log issues, but I feel like there's just going to be more issues that won't show up until it's too late.
So I guess I'm confused as to what you're looking for, right? Because
ideally, I mean, one thing that I'm looking for is I'd hope. I mean, I know that like Daniel said, a lot of the change has been incremental, and I guess what I'm looking for is I'd love to sort of like finalize, I guess, the JavaScript SDK and move on to other languages and not sort of have months where we're constantly improving the SDK and we sort of just and I guess I think part of that is like there's so like I'd really like to like focus on the core use cases of the Cloud Events SDK rather than I know there's some extra features of like discoverability and I'm not sure what other ones, but
help me understand here. So I think what you're saying is, based upon your experience with the SDK, there are some things that are lacking, and that's always going to be true of every piece of software. But in order to address the things that you're seeing, I really only see two paths forward, right? Because you can't just snap your fingers and say, okay, tomorrow everything's going to be perfect, right? And we can move on to another SDK or another language, right? So in order to get to that happy state that you want to get to, it seems like there's two different things that need to happen. They're not obviously mutually exclusive, but one is open up issues for the things that you find, and then the other one is obviously open PRs to fix the things that you find. And I'm not sure what else you're looking for aside from those things to happen, and whether it happens by you or somebody else. It seems like one of those two things needs to happen in order to get to that happy state that you want. So I'm confused as to what beyond that you're looking for. Or is it just you want those things to happen sooner rather than later?
I mean, I guess I don't want to spend as much time as I have been with the JavaScript SDK and still see that. Well, I don't know. This is probably a meta point, but just still not see the developer experience that I'd expect, and some of these issues still arise.
Right. Okay. Right. But that's basically another way of saying it's not where you think it needs to be, and that may or may not be true. I don't know, but let's assume for a minute it is true. What can we do to, or what can you do to fix that? Right? Because it seems to me, as a maintainer of the SDK, the best way to fix that would be to open PRs, right? Because you have very specific use cases in mind. Like, for example, you said you did a demo, right? And so therefore you have very specific flows that you have in mind that you want to get solved. And it seems to me that if those flows don't work for you, then you either open an issue or you open a PR to fix it to give you the user experience you want, right? I feel like I'm missing something here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, I'm not really sure of the solution, or exactly how to pinpoint the issue. Like, maybe one thing would be there should be, maybe I should create an issue, like there should be better conformance testing such that we can provide 20 like cloud events and test those. And I'm not sure, not sure why the existing tests didn't catch this. Maybe it's just improving the tests, or.
Okay,
So it sounded like the original issue was that you were sending invalid cloud events and the SDK was rejecting it. Is that not true? Because they do run the conformance tests.
The issue I ran upon when recording the demo was sending a valid cloud event, and it was marked as invalid, and it didn't allow me to use the SDK.
This was from the unreleased code that was in master, not the released code that's on Node or NPM.
No, I believe it was as the release code under the cloud events package.
You know, like, I mean, this isn't production stuff yet. We're all trying to work on this and try to get to a common place. And the reason we're doing it in Cloud Events Repo is so that all of these vendors go and participate. And we're trying to make this very generic solution that fits the needs of a lot of use cases. Right? Like, one of the balancing acts of being one of the SDK maintainers is that you have to think about features for specific use cases, but don't exclude the myriad of other use cases. Like, in my day-to-day stuff, I only think about Kubernetes, but there's not a single Kubernetes thing inside of the Golang SDK. So I think some of my feedback for you, Grant, is that your bugs they seem to be very focused on the exact task you're trying to do. And I think you're getting pushback because that might not be the best direction for the SDK because it's a generic solution, not a specific solution.
Yeah,
Daniel?
that's.
Go ahead, sorry, Grant.
Yeah, or sorry. I mean, one thing. I do know that. I mean, yeah, the issues that I've raised are from examples with one vendor and one couple like styles of cloud events, but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly why, how, like, just sending a cloud event over HTTP, that would be a different requirement, or how that would be specialized for my use case. I know there's lots of other different protocols, but I guess, yeah.
Okay, wait, Daniel, your hand's up.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing here is that there's there's a sense that a particular SDK is really not production ready. It's there are issues with it, and there isn't there isn't a well-defined path and a well-defined metric for saying, okay, this thing is this is ready now for all the general use cases that we expect from like a GA level piece of software. And so maybe conformance tests have been mentioned before, and I think maybe we need to kind of define, okay, so what does it mean for one of these to be kind of quote unquote 1.0 ready, or quote unquote general availability of that quality, where and then kind of have a comprehensive set of tests, have a and then have a way to measure, okay, so now and then we can then we can number one, test against that, and have a goal, and to be able to better communicate these types of concerns. So, oh, this isn't working for my case. Well, is your case in the conformance test? Is it part of the spec? Is something missing from the spec? And kind of have those kinds of conversations, because that sounds like what we're saying here. We have a particular experience that was not great, and well, how does that translate into what do we do about it in the SDK? Well, we can fix bugs here and there, but does that satisfy the experience? And so, bridging that gap, kind of the abstract experience for a developer doing a demo, and then how meat and potatoes, what do we do about it in the SDK? So yeah, maybe having a conformance test or some metric for this, saying, okay, this is how general GA quality is defined for our SDKs. Does that sound, Grant, does that make sense or does that capture what you're saying?
A little bit. I mean, as Lance mentioned in chat, like we do run the conformance tests, and so I'm less familiar with the conformance tests. Maybe I should be more familiar with it.
I think the existing conformance tests there's just like a couple of tests, and so it hasn't been really fleshed out to the extent that it could be, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, totally. It needs more. And that was the intent, is that we get the bones in, get people using it, add more tests, and then everything that's conformant testing for free.
One question I wanted to ask, I think Doug or I forget exactly who said this. So in terms of being like production ready, I guess my intention or my goal would be to use this SDK in a production library. Is that not something I should have as a goal in terms of like, should these SDKs not be as reliable as something you'd run in production?
I would assume all SDK authors want their stuff to be used in production. Sure.
Okay.
But it's a it's a process, right? And if they're not there today, then we need to work on a path to get them there. And the best way to do that is to identify the gaps and to open up PRs and to help get it there. But I guess I'm just still struggling with what you're looking to get out of this conversation. I mean, because you expressed your concern. You think that the SDK isn't where you need to be. Okay, but I'm not hearing a path or a suggestion for you to get there beyond what I think is already our normal process, which is issues PRs. but I feel like there's something else running around in your head that I just haven't been able to grasp yet, that you're looking for something different besides that.
I mean, that's sort of the way I've been rolling, in terms of creating issues and PRs, not as much as, I mean, Lance or other contributors. Yeah, I mean, one idea is just, well, I guess one thing is I'd like to understand, there's been, we've mentioned like, every person has their own use cases, and that might be an issue in terms of understanding the different use cases. I've definitely sort of created issues and PRs for like the HTTP receiving use case. Well, I guess, yeah. One idea is just creating a list of different use cases so that I can understand how other use cases fit in. I don't. I feel like just. I guess the frustration is like I feel like the process of building this SDK should be simpler and not as time consuming. And part of that maybe is, well, okay, I need to understand these other use cases, and I'd hope that the process would be just less time consuming, and we could more or less have a final state at some point where we can then move on to other things.
Okay, Slinky, your hands up.
Yeah, what I'm struggling, and I think Doug, you already said that, what I'm struggling to understand from this conversation is what is for you an SDK production ready? Because that's what I really do not understand. I mean, that's not a requirement that is written on the stone for any SDK out there. I mean, somebody might come here tomorrow and say Golang SDK is not production ready, but that's not enough. I mean, if you have some ideas, some use cases, why don't you try to write this down in a document saying, for me, the SDK production ready means having feature XYZ, covering use case XYZ, and so on. So then you can maybe start working on understanding what are the changes needed to implement those in the SDK itself. I think that's a reasonable way to do that. And yeah.
I mean, sort of along those lines, it sounds like, Grant, maybe it'd be useful if you could document sort of your vision for what a production-ready SDK looks like, what its features are, what is the user experience and stuff like that. Because if nothing else, it will it would force a discussion among the group to see if everybody agrees with that vision, and hopefully they do. And if they do, then that's going to lead to, you know, either concrete issues or even better, concrete pull requests to take a step in that direction. I'm trying to figure out some, you know, sort of concrete next steps here to address your concerns. That's the only thing I could think of offhand.
Right, Doc. I think that's the best solution.
But I guess the one thing that You said something interesting though, Grant, in your last statement. You said something about, you know, it's taking a long time, or I can't remember the exact wording, right? It's a very time-consuming process, and I don't think anybody would disagree with you. I mean, that's why most of the folks in these SDKs, they seem to spend a fair portion of their day working on these SDKs, and I know a lot of them actually have other jobs as well. But I'm not sure how anybody can address that concern of yours unless you think that people are focusing on the wrong things. Because if you assume that they're focusing on the right things in the SDK, it's just taking a while because there's so many things that need to get done. There's nothing that can happen there other than, you know, help find people to actually work on it. But are you suggesting that you think people are focusing on the wrong things?
I mean, it's been a process, as we've discussed, of sort of envisioning the changing the library. In some ways, like, I'd say yes. Like, there's again, I don't know exactly the use cases. It'd be great to maybe see that from folks and how they're using the SDK. And I mean, in terms of like, I think it would be good to give an example. So at one point, I wrote an alternative to the JavaScript SDK, which was like the TypeScript SDK, and we sort of went with that. And of course, that was like a very slimmed down MVP of an SDK that fulfilled the requirements of being able to consume a cloud event and provide like an object, and had sort of the ideal developer experience. And I guess the amount of time that it took for that was like a week or two. And I guess I would ideally I'd like to have a developer cycle where allow changes in the SDK to be faster, sort of similar to that. I don't know if I'm going anywhere. I think we've had a lot of good discussion. Yeah, I mean, continuing the issue and PR cycle sounds okay.
Okay, I guess but I do think it'd be useful though if you could write down in some fashion your vision for where you think you'd like things to be, and even if it's as simple as these are some of the features that you think are missing, whether it's features that are functional features that are missing, or user experience type features, just to, oh, this should be this way because the current way you can do it isn't as user-friendly as it should be, right? If you can at least enumerate the things that you think are missing that keep it from reaching that happy state that you want to get to, being able to jot those down in some fashion would be really useful, I would think.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And I think that'd be useful for a lot of SDKs. Yeah, I'll go, and that's a great suggestion. I'll go do that for my perspective for JavaScript.
Okay. Does anybody else want to chime in here in terms of any possible suggestions for next steps?
I sort of want to, I don't know if Lance is on the call, I sort of want to understand some of the use cases and really just anybody on the call of some of the use cases for Cloud Events SDK that maybe I'm missing, or just in general.
Well, yeah, I'm on the call. We're using the Cloud Events SDK in a project I'm working on at Red Hat for FAS on Knative, and using it in another project that I can't really talk about. I think one of the things that came up as a potentially contentious issue, and I guess it was on a GitHub issue, was exposing not just this object called receiver, but also exposing a binary receiver and a structured receiver. And I think it might have been Scott that commented on that and put it pretty well. It's, you know, there's sort of the really simple use case that I think you're looking for. But that use case isn't the only one. And it might be that, you know, in a certain system, we know that all of the events are going to be structured, for example. So why go through, in order to optimize our code, why go through a more abstract sort of just receiver thing and instead actually use this thing that's a little bit more specific, you know, the structured receiver. So I guess that's maybe an example of how just exposing only very simple top level interfaces isn't going to work for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good example. Okay. Well, I'll go and write down some thoughts.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thanks for listening.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other topics? Envision? Yeah. Okay. Any other topics you want to bring up for the call today? Okay. I guess that's it then. Lunchtime. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk next time.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.